Hello there! Alright, my young Padawans. After coming off the magnificent thriller of a two-parter last week, we are back with another episode of The Bad Batch. This is episode 9, titled The Crossing. We open with the Batch zipping down to a barren-type planet in pursuit of a mine that Sid purchased for resources. The crew is mining for the ore called Ipsium. What it's used for, I'm not sure yet, but what tech tells us is that it's highly volatile and ready to explode like a prime thermal detonator. The opening scene had a very Mando-esque Western feel to it, with the music and certain camera angles of the crew walking through the sand. As they proceed to enter the mine, Hunter assigns them their roles. Tech will accompany him into the mine, and Wrecker and Omega will stand watch outside. As this is their first mission since Echo's departure, they're adapting to a new squad of 4. The last time they were a squad of 4 was before they even discovered Echo on Skako Minor. Hunter and Tech head into the mine to find the ore, while Wrecker and Omega sit outside scanning the area. In the distance, though, is a looming storm, and also a spying pair of eyes watching their movement. Omega sits outside, fidgeting with a rock while looking rather solemn, and Wrecker asks her what's bothering her. She says she misses Echo, and Wrecker agrees. We have to remember that Omega really took a liking to Echo. While I'd say that Hunter is more of that fatherly role model to her, Echo was absolutely instrumental in forming who she is growing into. He's been like the wise older brother, a voice of reason, and essentially the empathetic glue that has held the crew together. I would wager that we're going to see the ripples of his departure as time goes on. While inside the mine, the ore is in a hard-to-reach place, so Hunter summons Omega to head on in and retrieve it for them. Outside, we see that the individual who was watching them has now rolled up on the Marauder, undetected. When they exit the mine, Hunter is surprised to see the ship taking off, and all of a sudden the crew finds themselves stranded. After tossing around the blame, they decide the best course of action is to find the small town Tech scanned on the way in. As they're walking through a narrow canyon, the ground begins to rumble, and out in the distance, a stampede of wildebeest-type animals are fleeing the looming storm. The crew starts scrambling to find safety, and they throw grapple hooks up onto a rock formation to get above the stampede. Now, I don't know about you, but all of a sudden, I started to get some returning PTSD from The Lion King. The canister of Ipsium was left on the ground, so Wrecker drops down onto it, shielding it with his body in the middle of the herd. The herd passes, and to my relief, he narrowly escaped the fate of the great King Mufasa. The storm rages toward them, and Tech scans a cave opening to take refuge in, but drops the Ipsium in the chaos. Unable to retrieve it in time, the storm flings the canister into the cave entrance, and the falling debris traps them inside. Damn. This is what, 0 for 4 now in mission completions? They just can't catch a break. As they begin to move the debris, Omega reports that the transponder is not signaling them from the Marauder. Tech says that the thief most likely disabled it, but getting out is a priority. The ship is only a means of transport, he says. Omega does not take this statement lightly, as she exclaims that this is our ship, our home, and they already lost Echo, and she doesn't want to lose their ship too. This harkens back to what I said earlier. Echo was really an emotional refuge for Omega. While the others are definitely good people, Tech is purely practical to a fault. Wrecker as well, let's just say he's not Socrates over there, and Hunter, while ultra caring and empathetic, still lacks a sense of warmness. All of these emotional missing pieces were filled with Echo's wisdom and calming presence. It's clear that Omega is struggling with this critical change in her life. She walks away telling them that she needs to be alone. In the corner of her eye, she notices a faint light in the distance. She pulls out her drill and breaks down a piece of the wall and finds an absolute mother lode of Ipsium ore. Back at the entrance, Hunter and Wrecker tells Tech that he needs to go find her and talk to her. He stumbles on her mining the Ipsium, and they decide to mine as much as they can get. As she gets a little overzealous, she loses her balance and plunges to the depths below. Without hesitation, Tech jumps in immediately after her. This greatly surprised me, and I think it's an indication that Tech, while still always practical, does in fact really have an attachment to Omega. After a pretty awesome ride through the underground aqueduct, Tech and Omega find a thin rock area that could be a way out if they can get the Ipsium down there. They inform Hunter and Wrecker. See? Even I'm having a tough time with Echo gone. They inform them that they've got to take the water slide ride too, and we'll see them after they drop over the waterfall. Meanwhile, Tech and Omega get a moment to have a heart-to-heart. I think it's important to see how they are both processing this, as neither one of them understands how the other can feel the way they do. Omega is clearly having a hard time with change, while Tech explains that change is a fundamental part of life and they must adapt, as that is what soldiers do. But Omega says they're more than soldiers. They're family, aren't they? This part was awesome. As someone who works in the field of psychology, I love to see moments like this, especially when it comes to emotional processing. We all have our defense mechanisms. We all have our blind spots. We all process pain, hardship, and change in unique ways. And Tech says that just because he may view it differently, it doesn't mean that he isn't affected by it. It's just that this is how he adapts and gets through it, by utilizing his practicality. In that moment of vulnerability, I think Omega finally has a moment of understanding and realization that while not perfect, the batch does very much care about her. Hunter and Wrecker arrive, the Ipsium is placed, and they make it out of the cave. As they arrive at the small spaceport, they find that it's abandoned. But, as luck would have it, there's an array to send out a transmission to Sid. They get in touch with her, but she's quite reluctant to help them out, which honestly kind of pissed me off. They've done so much for her, as they remind her, and she says, fine, give me a few days, and hangs up. WTF, Sid. We're definitely going to revisit this later. Omega, however, revitalized for her new appreciation of Tech, says, don't worry, we'll get through it, just like we always do. Tech smiles and nods at her, and they look out to the distance of a massive lightning storm headed their way. Roll credits. While this episode didn't move the plot further specifically, I think it was needed. It was symbolic, meaningful, and really let us see the impact that Echo leaving has had on Omega. It also gave her a chance to bond with Tech, and I feel it was an opportunity for more growth with Tech as well. We've seen glimpses here of his evolution, and with Echo now absent, it's a good opportunity for more character development. My friends, I thank you for tuning in, and if you like this content, please help us out by subscribing and giving us a like. Be sure to join us on our weekly live show, The Amorphous Jedi, where we talk about all things Star Wars. Also, be sure to stop by our game-centric channel at BadCuzDad. We'll see you next week, and in the meantime, remember, there's always a bigger fish.